All right, we are ready to open up the Vision Committee for February 19th. I'd like to welcome everybody that has come to City Council today, and we're glad to have you here. Let's go ahead and start with a call to order and a roll call, please.
Councilmember Dennehy, absent. Councilmember Gonzalez.
Here.
Councilmember Jaquez, absent. Councilmember Meisner, absent. Councilmember Reed,
Here.
Councilmember B. Smith,
Here.
Mayor Pro Tem Hamrick,
Here.
Mayor Smith.
Here. Let's go ahead and start with our discussion for item A, the adoption of the 2018 International Building Codes. I'll go ahead and turn the time over to you, Kathy, if that's all right.
Sure, that's fine. Thank you, Mayor and City Council. This is in regards to the adoption of the 2018 International Codes. From a historical standpoint, the City of Canyon City has adopted a newer code version every 6 years to keep up with the updated changes. Alternative materials, design, and methods of construction and equipment. We have not updated our code editions for 12 years. The 2006 Energy Conservation Code was adopted in July 2008 due to state mandate. The remaining 2006 international codes were adopted September 1st of 2008. We've been having ongoing stakeholder meetings. The building department has hosted 2 contractor meetings in regards to updating to the 2018 I-codes. We receive feedback from contractors, homeowners, and business owners. The first meeting was held on October 29th, 2019, with an attendance of about 24. The second meeting was on January 15th, 2020, with an attendance of about 40. The largest areas of concern for contractors were concerned with the fire suppression system in 1- and 2-family dwellings. This would be for single-family dwelling or 2-unit duplex or townhouse. They felt the cost of a 1-inch water tap and installing the suppression system would be too great, affecting the selling price. Approximate difference in cost for a 1-inch water tap would be $3,350. A plumbing contractor spoke up at the second meeting and said they were installing a fire suppression system in a 2,200 square foot home in Florence, and their cost was approximately $6,000 to add the system. The cost to add a fire suppression system and a larger water tap would be approximately $10,000 in total. The second concern was the energy code requirements were going to cost them more, but they felt they could sell the additional savings in utility bills to new buyers. Approximately $4,068 for a 2,400 square foot home. See Addendum A. After speaking with several contractors, they think it will only cost about $2,000 to $3,000 more, as a lot of the vendors are already working in areas with updated codes and are performing those code requirements for energy when they come to Canyon City to work. Most suppliers have moved to updated codes, and costs have already been absorbed in new construction being built. Through both meetings, these were the only major concerns about updating to the 2018 international codes. The reason for updating our codes: we have lost our ISO rating in 2018. That's our Insurance Service Office. Engineers and architects are asking to use methods out of newer code versions, and some prefer to prepare a set of plans on newer code editions, not older editions. Proposed state mandates, new alternative methods and materials by manufacturers, more options become available for different occupancies. The timeline for the adoption of the 2018 International Code editions: February, start reviewing all the code editions. March, additional stakeholder meetings with the fire department giving a demonstration of a fire suppression systems. Prepare an ordinance with city attorneys. Provide another contractor meeting in June or July of 2020 to go over all the changes. Provide ordinance at the General Government Committee meeting in August and September. Approval of ordinance by City Council in October and November of 2020. Ordinance to take effect January 1st, 2021. The proposed code here is a list of the 2018 editions that would be reviewed, potentially modified, and adopted by an ordinance that would be approved by City Council in October and November of 2020. The International Building Code, the International Residential Code, the International Mechanical Code, the International Fuel Gas Code, International Energy Conservation Code, International Existing Building Code, the International Property Maintenance Code, and the International Swimming Pool and Spa Code.
So at this point, we're looking for direction from council. Do you want us to continue moving forward with, preparations of moving to the 2018 code? I think, the loss of the ISO rating is a pretty big deal. It hasn't necessarily affected homeowners insurance rates yet, but at some point, that is going to come into effect, and you will see homeowner insurance rates start to increase if we don't take some type of action to move to those newer codes.
Are there any comments from council? Councilmember Reed.
So I've attended both of the meetings with the stakeholder meetings that we've had, and there's been a lot of positive feedback as well as a lot of recommendations that have been made both ways. Something that I would like to just bring to everybody's attention, I handed council some packets, and I also have business cards in the back for anyone here who would like me to email them a copy. Lester Lamone from P3 Communities was able to get me some helpful information from the National Association of Home Builders that gives some recommendations of some amendments to be able to do. And so I have not had an opportunity to look through all of those, but I do think that it is something that I would recommend that council and builders and others take a peek and look into to be able to get further information. My concern is that there has been a lot of discussion about the sprinkler systems in the residential homes. But it's a big code book. I saw it on Kathy's desk. And I just want to make sure that we're not only focusing on one piece, but that we're getting an understanding of the whole picture and how this is affecting everyone. In my personal opinion, it's not whether or not we do it, it's just if we do it the right way and making sure that we have all of the information. And just to give everybody, again, that information, it's the National Association of Home Builders. They have a 2018 International Code suggested amendments, as well as an International Energy Code suggested amendments, as well as an additional documentation that kind of goes through the process of the recommended changes. So I did provide the first two to council, and the other one is a 75-page document, so I apologize. But again, my cards are on the back, so if you would like a copy, I'd be happy to share those with you. So I just wanted to throw that out there for some more information.
Ryan.
In addition to this great information, we have reached out to Pueblo and Salida and taking a look at how they adopted some of these newer codes as well. I think it's important to be very consistent with some of the surrounding communities, so contractors, kind of have a very similar experience in all of those communities and have they know what those guidelines are when they move from community to community. It helps to be very similar in that respect as well.
Councilmember Reed.
Just piggybacking off of that, I just want to make sure that it's understood that because this administration is ready for business and wanting to do things, it's extremely important that we hear from the contractors, that we hear from the stakeholders, the building owners, all of those things. The desire truly is to make sure that we are leading with our best foot forward and making changes only when changes need to be made.
Mayor Pro Tem Hamrick.
Thank you. And I would second your comments. I think that's something that we need to do. And thank you, Ryan, for reaching out to others to see if we can't gather some wisdom from people who've gone through this already. And excuse me if this is kind of totally off the walls, but why is it called International Building Codes?
Kathy, do you happen to know why?
Because it's for nationwide. It's not only for us, but you can start from California, it goes to New York. The code book has all the seismic requirements in it. So actually, California has their own California International Building Code, and Florida has their own International Building Code, and it's because of their design factors.
Right.
But this code can be used anywhere. Actually, it's even used nationally now in Mexico, Iran, Iraq. There's a whole lot of places that it's adopted in now.
Is this a U.S. national organization that
Yes.
puts out these building codes, and they're calling it international because they hope others are going to use them? I mean,
Correct. Correct.
And what is so the legal ramifications, this is a national group. I imagine it's something like, other national groups that have a semi-legislative role in establishing codes and standards and things like that. But what, do we know what the legal basis for their, is it just that this organization gets together with the insurance companies and says, hey, if you guys don't do this, no more insurance, or what?
I think it's really more about standardizing codes across the country and trying to have, some set of standards that, builders can, they know what they're going to be doing when they go from jurisdiction to jurisdiction.
Okay, thank you.
Councilmember Gonzalez.
Thank you. Pardon my ignorance, but what is the Fremont County using right now for their building codes?
The same as us, 2006.
2006.
They're getting ready to go to the
They are
18 as
moving,
well.
okay, they're moving towards,
Yeah, they're working with us.
So-
I believe they've been present at some of our meetings too, in the
Okay.
discussions.
I haven't been to any, but I've watched them. I just wondered how different it was going to be.
So we're looking to adopt, the city, the county, and the fire district all at the same time.
Okay, all right.
Yeah,
Thank you.
there's a desire for consistency between all of
Yeah.
us. And so actually the county originally was the one that said, hey, we need to talk about 2018 building code.
Okay.
And here we are.
And are we looking at amending a lot of the same?
I don't know, they have different areas. Right now, they do not have a mechanical code. So I don't know if they're planning on adopting a mechanical, but as far as the energy and the IBC and the IRC, which is the International Building Code and the International Residential Code, they're looking at adopting the same.
Okay.
As far as what their requirements, I don't know. We haven't gotten together, we haven't moved forward that far to see how close it's going to be in proximity to how we adopt.
That's a good point, though, I think. We probably should sit down with them and see if we can make it as close as possible.
Yeah, make it
Yeah.
mirror as much as possible. Thank you.
Councilmember Smith.
Is there a reason that we haven't updated anything for 12 years?
I don't know why the previous building official didn't adopt in 2012. I have no answer for that, I'm sorry.
I was just wondering if there was a specific reason.
We should be on the 2012 right now, and we're not.
Councilmember Reed.
I was just going to say, somewhat unofficially, some of the conversations that I got to have with Wyatt at the county is the county has some unique situations, such as water, for example. So when you're talking about things like sprinkler systems, the water pressure, things like that, you're dealing with wells, different things like that. So it sounds like they're going to have their own unique set of challenges to be able to make changes. But the nice thing about, again, this code is that it can be amended. It does not have to be as written, and so that's why it's really important for us to understand the areas that are troublesome to the builders and appraisers and consumers.
Councilmember Smith.
I guess this question is more for Ryan. Is the fire district on board with some of the amendments that per se may be made to the fire suppressant systems?
Yeah, and I think, the fire chief wouldn't be doing his job if he wasn't pushing for fire suppression systems. It's one of those things that he is encouraging, and That's part of the reason why he is asked to do a demonstration with the builders and with the city and with the county present to kind of see how these suppression systems work. I think he certainly will more than likely encourage us to adopt that, probably all the way through this process. But we do have to make decisions that are best for our community, and with a shortage of housing, we certainly have to take into account the cost of housing and what it costs to produce these homes.
And then I don't know if there's any insurance people in here, but is there any insurance savings in those suppressant systems, or does it really equal out?
Yeah, what I've been told is there aren't necessarily any savings by having the fire suppression systems, and sometimes they can even be somewhat of a liability with how they're maintained, and they do have to be maintained on a regular basis.
Thank you.
So Councilmember Smith and Gonzalez, or those who weren't able to attend some of those meetings, just some back information, just on behalf of Fire Chief, and his, I guess maybe his passion behind pushing for the fire suppression is that newer homes and newer furniture materials burn hotter and faster than before. And so while there's less fires happening, there's actually more fatalities that are happening with fires. But with that said, most communities do not require fire suppression systems. We would be a rare and unique case in Canyon City if we adopted it in full. I think by and large, the feedback from our contractors were they would rather not see it as a requirement, but allow it to be an option for homeowners to choose that for themselves if they would like that. Something the city could consider, we do waive having to go to a larger tap size for commercial businesses if it's used for fire suppression systems. Is that right?
Actually, we provide a second tap for
Okay.
fire suppression systems at no additional charge.
At no additional charge. And so something that, if it was important to the city, we could offer perhaps a discount or something if they chose to have fire suppression system, that it would help offset that extra cost for having a larger tap. Is something that we could consider. Some communities say that if your house is over 5,000 square feet, then you can charge them. There was some controversy with that as well during those conversations, saying that, well, if you can afford to have a big fancy house, then what, are you saying that their lives are more important than other people's? And so it just seems like it's just easier to keep it simple and just have one simple standard for everybody. And for me, that would be to do it in the favor of our contractors and the implications that it could be for those costs, and maybe look at more of incentivizing people to make those choices for themselves. Councilmember Meisner, thank you for making it. I would just like to point out, I know you have to rush from work, and we appreciate you.
I didn't
doing
rush,
that.
So apparently you're on the water issue, on the issue of taps and fire suppression. I was under the impression that required a separate tap. Is that not the case for residential?
Well, yeah, for commercial, it's a separate tap. For residential, it would be an upsized tap.
From 3/4 inch to 1 inch.
In the new code.
For residential, it's not a separate tap.
So Kathy, are you looking for direction from council as far as what you're going to be drawing up to consider as we continue these conversations?
Correct. I would like to move forward with the review. It's going to take plenty of time to review and go through and try to create what we need to amend and bring it back to everybody for review.
So should we start out with the fire suppression system with city council? Is this kind of a thumbs up kind of situation of where we'd like to see it drafted for consideration?
What is that draft?
Well, yeah, I think, at this point, do you want us to move forward with plans to adopt the 2018, and then, we can bring something forward, very much in line with what Councilwoman Reed brought to us from the NAHB with, different sections and whether or not they should be included or removed at a later time. But right now, I think what we're looking for is, do you want us to continue down this path with 2018 code adoption?
Any comments from council members on if you would like to move forward with the 2018 building code adoption with amendments?
With
If
amendments.
the information that I read suggested or indicated that we were getting some contractor support. And if we have contractor support, then then I'm in favor. And if we continue to keep those contractors involved in the process. I mean, those are the people, in my opinion, that know what's going on. And those are the people that need to help build that policy. So I don't know what process we need to implement that we historically haven't implemented, but those contractors that are interested in being involved in that process and having direct input, we need to provide an avenue for them to be involved.
Yeah, and I think, we plan on having additional public meetings and probably tearing apart this NAHB document and going through that in more depth. But absolutely, staff agrees that it does need to be a public process, and we need to have involvement from our stakeholders.
Mayor Pro Tem Hamrick.
And Councilman Meisner, you didn't get to hear Ryan's comment, but one of the things that I've been concerned about is learning from people who have gone through this process, and our city administrator says that he's reached out to Salida and Pueblo to involve them because they have already adopted some of these codes.
Right.
There may be lessons learned there. We want to hear from the regulated community as well as some of the regulators, if we want to call ourselves that, because there's really two sides to that coin, and we need
Right.
to
Been
be
there,
fully
done that.
informed as
Yeah.
the best that we can.
I agree.
Yeah, and I think there is value in that. Sitting in that meeting, there's oftentimes contractors to say, well, this is what they're doing in Pueblo, and I like this about Pueblo, and here's some alternatives that can be considered. And I think we definitely, the more consistency we can have, the better. Councilmember Gonzalez.
The one thing I want to point out, and I know you had mentioned, some things in the past have not always worked. I think it's important to remember that even after this code is adopted, we can still amend. So if there's issues that arise that we're having a hard time with, I think we need to be open to listening to how we can make these codes work. I don't feel like that's an open book right now. A lot of contractors have a lot of obstacles that they're having to climb over. And so the culture should be, how can we make this work for this unique situation? Much like you said about the county has unique situations. That's why the code is written the way it is. We're all unique in our communities. So I think we need to keep that open to, I think this needs to be a continuous conversation that goes on beyond this council. Just needs to be a continuous culture thing that we're doing.
Okay, so I'll take that as yes, you want to continue discussions. And then we got a thumbs up here. Mayor Pro Tem Hamrick.
Well, Madam Mayor, I would recommend that if there's anyone here, an interested party in the audience, that has an opinion on whether the city should or should not pursue revising the codes, to hear what they had to say, if there was anyone that was so inclined to share that with us.
If you would like to speak, please come to the microphone. We'll need to have your name and address, please.
First of all, I'm deaf, so I don't hear everything, okay? My name's Paul Vanderputten. I'm the owner of DWR Construction. My address is 185 County Road 365A in Fremont County. I work in town some. One of the things that I'm here in Canyon City for 12 years. I was a building contractor in California. If you're not careful, when I left When I was finished in California, it was $340 a square foot to build in California. If you adopt this kind of stuff in Canyon City, what you talk about, California, New York, wherever the heck you want, this is not California. You're gonna find that happening here. A 2,300 square foot house is gonna cost you $680,000. That's not happening here. I don't have a problem with adopting energy codes and doing stuff like that, but you have to be careful about how much you go. We're not Pueblo, we're not Denver, we're not Colorado Springs, this is Canyon City. You have to take care of the people that live here, come here. There might be maybe 10% of the housing in this city that's over $500,000, maybe. You have to be careful of what you do here. Adopting fire sprinklers in a residential house, there's pros and cons to all of it. And I'm not saying it's a bad deal. I think it's a great idea, but I think it's a little bit costly overall with everything that goes on. But you're dealing with a city that's over 150 years old. You're going to fire sprinkler the next 300 homes. What are you going to do with all the rest of them that are 150 years old? You can't fix that. The people that live here, most of them are retired. Most of them, you got to be careful that if you make this too costly and too off the wall, you're going to lose a lot. And I'm not against it. I'm just saying, Kathy and Greg and all the guys are doing great, but that's a big jump from going from all the way to 2018. That's a big jump. And
Thank you, I appreciate
we can't
your comments.
compete.
And I think we've found a common theme sometimes as this new council, that there have been a number of things that have been neglected by previous councils that are requiring us to make big jumps to get a little bit back up to times. Doesn't mean we need to be on the highest standards of California. We're never going to do that, but we are very cognizant of what our builders need and what we need to do to be competitive in the building market. And I appreciate all of the contractors that have taken their time to come meet with us on a regular basis. I really valued their opinions and their experience, their expertise, and they had awesome suggestions, and I appreciate that. And I think they'll really be key as we move forward to making responsible and efficient decisions when it comes to cost as well. And speaking of that, as far as energy conservation, the builders seemed, for the most part, didn't have as many issues with that because most of the materials available now are all energy efficient. All the windows are energy efficient. They're the same cost. There's not a lot of additional costs, but they can be made up by having an energy efficient home. And that seems to be a little bit more accepted by the general population too, to have those utility savings. So I guess my suggestion is to continue those conversations forward. We've definitely got tons of feedback as far as fire suppression and energy conservation, and those are probably the two biggest ticket items and the hottest and most controversial ones. But I also want to make sure, as Councilmember Reed had mentioned, that we are very careful in all the other considerations and implications of adopting 2018.
Yes.
Thumbs up for you. Thumbs up.
Yes, I want to continue to have the conversation.
Are there any other final comments from City Council as we send Kathy forward to starting to work on some of these revisions or recommendations?
Just that I'm looking at the timeline, and I'm not seeing a lot of ability for council to have feedback, except that once we get a model code or something like that, after the attorneys have massaged it. But maybe there's a way to involve a couple of us in this process, to keep council informed the best that you can.
Sure, we can either, we can do that, and then we do plan on taking it to 2 general government meetings, once to give you an overview and take feedback, and a second time to bring back another draft to make sure that's what you want before we bring it back for the full ordinance readings.
Thank you, Ryan.
Ryan, is that comment forum still open?
On the website?
Yep.
It is, and we will keep it open the entire time.
So I don't know if everyone's aware, would you mind just sharing that for information for anyone here who maybe didn't
Sure.
see it?
Yeah, when we updated our city website last year, at the end of last year, one of the features that came with the new website is a forum for public comment. And this building code adoption is actually the first time that we're using it. So we do have a forum. It's on the building department's web page, where you can click into this forum and ask questions and start providing feedback. And I think we have some people that are using it right now, but I'd love to see more public engagement there.
Awesome. Carrie, I don't know if this would be possible, but if there's an article done on this in the newspaper on the digital side, if there could be a direct link to that, that would be awesome to make it easier, as easy as possible to get that feedback. Yeah, thank you. So any other final comments before we move on to the next item? Okay, well then, Kathy, thank you very much. Do you have any questions for us?
I just have one more comment. I was wondering, take just a few minutes of your time. I'd like to look into updating our contractor licensing requirements. They have not been updated for numerous years. And I'd like to update them to make them a little more friendlier, and wanted to see if that would be something maybe to proceed forward with as well.
So right now, we have 2 classes of contractor licenses. We have the general contractor license and the limited license. With the limited license, you can only, contractors can only apply for one trade before they have to take the test to be a general contractor. Other communities typically allow up to 2 to 4 licenses under that limited license. So, somebody who, Kathy, you can give a couple examples of what a limited license might look like.
Yeah, when we're talking limited license, we're talking about somebody that wants to do drywall, or they want to do framing, or they want to do concrete, and they want to do asphalt. They could obtain, in a lot of jurisdictions, they can obtain up to 4 different licenses as a limited contractor for each one. And so I'd like to implement something of such, so some of our people that are coming from Pueblo, Colorado Springs, Salida, they would have that option if they're a roofer, but they also do stucco. They could obtain 2 limited licenses to do so.
I think that helps open the door. It is more business friendly, but it does open the door for some of these contractors to come in from outside of the area, or even from within Canyon City, and the threshold to go and take that general contractor's license is lifted a little bit, so they can actually do more work before we put a barrier in front of them, before they have to go jump through over a hurdle to accomplish something.
Councilmember Meisner?
Anything that you can do that's going to make things easier for people, you need to do it, in my opinion.
Thank you.
Councilmember Gonzalez?
So Jim just took all my words.
Sorry.
But then I also want to say thank you for recognizing that there's a need for that and bringing it up in discussion.
Thank you.
That's really what we want to see. So thank you.
Mhm.
Thanks. And thanks, Jim.
I think we're probably all thinking the same thing. Anything that can be more business friendly, let's do it, and let's do it as soon as possible. Any thumbs up down here, thumbs down, or any other comments? Awesome. All right, thank you, Kathy, so much.
Thank you.
We appreciate it. Our next item on the agenda is the Black Hills Energy donation. And you'll see a letter that we just need to give permission or just our
hear everything.
our nod of approval to have Ryan Stevens sign this letter if we wish. This is an opportunity where the Black Hills property at the Clark Power Plant, they had some water rights that they're selling. And with the profits from those water rights, Black Hills would like to see that those profits from selling those water rights comes back to Canyon City itself, since it was derived from here. And it's an opportunity that we can use as a tool to help see that that potential open space be open to the public, and that we just need to see if that's something that City Council would be in favor of.
So just a little bit as far as the logistics on this, this would be something that I would sign to give to Black Hills. We would bring a resolution back to council at the first meeting in March to ratify.
Councilmember Meisner.
Well, I'm going to try to be polite, but it still irks me that they have to tell us that it's appropriate that they're giving us this money and then turn around and essentially limit what we can do with the money, which we all know means we're going to try to decontaminate, which was their problem to start with, which they profited from. So, as I mentioned in my email, I don't like the smell of this, but I can live with it considering the value that property as an outtake has to the community. But I just do not like that sentence that includes the word appropriate.
Councilmember Gonzalez.
So did we ever determine what was infected in that land, or?
We're still working with a third party as far as acquisition of that property.
And do we know how much it's going to cost to decontaminate that land?
At this point, we do not.
There's,
More than 250.
yeah, so I think it's
what
a
I'm
clear,
getting at.
just because this money could potentially go towards helping with that contamination cleanup, doesn't mean we would be responsible
Okay.
to clean up everything that's there.
That's what I was getting to.
Yeah, and I think,
is-
yeah, it would just help move it forward. And if we choose not to do anything at Black Hills, we don't have to. We can still use this money for any type of park or open space beautification that Canyon City sees fit. But I will never accept the responsibility to clean up the contamination of Black Hills property. However, if we are able to get a partnership with Legacy Lands and Black Hills and the city of Canyon City, what can be done is to design that open space in a way that we can work around some of those spots. As long as they're covered and not touched, they're fine the way they are. We don't have to worry about that. But as soon as we want to dig or move ground, then that's where the EPA comes in. And that's where Legacy Lands and their specialty can help us minimize that, where we dig up, and make sure that we do it in the most cost-effective way. But in the end, it's not our responsibility to take care of that.
So exactly, and I would like to see the three of us working together to make sure that, like Jim said, I'm going to try to be polite, but just that the right participants are held accountable in that deal. This deal, I don't know what else to say. I guess it's.
Smells funny.
It does smell funny, but if our attorneys can look at it and say that there's nothing fishy about it, no ties that might make it sound like we have to use this in a specific manner towards that land, then I guess I'm okay with it.
Mayor Pro Tem Hamrick.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I have a lot of experience working on CERCLA sites and I've seen the guts of how CERCLA works. And it's quite concerning because they're, even with the best of intentions, essentially, I call it the harpoon of CERCLA. You can get stuck with the harpoon of CERCLA, where you become legally liable for all of the cleanup, whatever. But this letter, to me, does not get us into that area because it says the city agrees to use the donation to promote the betterment of the site. Betterment is a pretty fuzzy word. That can mean a lot of different things. It does not necessarily mean things that would generate liability for us. It also says if redevelopment of the site is abandoned, or if the city identifies another opportunity to promote the betterment of its parks, recreation resources, or the general beautification of the city may use the funds for those purposes. So I don't see that this is a hand-tying letter that Ryan would sign. It's basically just kind of a handshake between the two entities, the city and Black Hills. I'm sure that they get credit from the Public Utilities Commission for things like this. That's great. That's not a bad thing. And I think that the language here is loose enough that with the guidance of our attorneys, when we're conducting specific actions or have specific ideas of how we might use these funds, as long as we get that type of legal review, that's really the only catch that I would see there, or potential sticking point that we would have to honor. Other than that, I think that this is not a bad deal.
I think it's also important to point out that this agreement doesn't mean we're actually going to receive those funds. It's going to the PUC, and it has to get approval for that. And so this is just an opportunity to show the PUC that the city is in agreement of accepting $250,000.
What we're agreeing to do is spend the money.
Yeah.
Got any lipstick?
I can give you, I won't say it, it would be inappropriate. We do have a representative from Black Hills here, John Vigil. Do you have a desire to come and approach council?
Am I on?
Yes.
Oh, great. Good evening, members of council, Mayor Smith. Thank you for the opportunity. I'm glad that you're having a conversation about this letter tonight. This letter was really introduced simply because we at Black Hills Energy have these ditch shares that we would be selling to return them to the appropriate use, which is agriculture. And as a result of that, we as a company wanted to see those funds come back to Canyon City because the W.N. Clark facility was here, because this was the community that was most impacted. I can tell you that at the hearing and at the PUC, there are several interveners, including the Office of Consumer Counsel, and there are some that wish to see these funds returned back to all customers. We have advocated that because W.N. Clark was here, that they should go back to this community specifically. And so this letter is simply acknowledgement from the city that you're willing to accept it. The first letter, the first version, was actually more broad and really just said, city, it's your money to do with it what you wish. We have no intention of following what you do with those funds. This money, once it's in your hands, is yours to use as the city sees fit.
Just some clarification, there was a first version of the letter. I did ask for it to specifically state in writing that really, as much as Black Hills says that we can use it for anything they want, their desire is that it go back to the beautification and the help of bringing the Clark Station property back to life. And I felt like it would be the right thing to do to be up front and have that in writing, that if they had that intention. Yeah. With that said, we still can do what we want with it if the PUC allows us to have that. And I think that we would be very happy to put it to good use.
Yeah. And that's our hope. And if the city agrees to have this letter signed by Ryan, then we'll be filing that this week, hopefully with an outcome by the end of the week or early next week.
Councilmember Meisner.
I'm curious as to why Black Hills didn't offer the water shares for sale back to the city?
I wasn't intimately involved with the transaction, but what I can tell you is the water ditch company approached Black Hills Energy and let us know that they weren't being used for the appropriate use,
Right.
and that there was an opportunity. I don't know beyond that.
Thank you.
Ryan Stevens.
I was just going to say to council, if Black Hills doesn't have a preference in how that, the money is actually used, and council does have a preference to have language that's a little bit more broad, we could certainly go back to that first version as well. That's up to council.
Councilman Meisner.
It's a council, obviously, decision, but if Black Hills is interested in giving us a donation, as a donation, and get credit from the PUC for giving us a donation, then a gift is a gift, and you don't tell somebody what to do with a gift. And my preference is to remove any limitations with that money.
Councilmember Reed.
Madam Mayor, I just needed some clarification. When you were talking about the letter and the specifications about beautifying the area, you said that that was something that you had requested, correct? So the desire was to have that language in there came from our side, essentially.
It did, because, well, it came from, I guess, me.
Okay, I agree with that. I just wanted to make sure I was understanding before I made my next
Right.
comment, which would be that with the overall goal that we have discussed previously at other meetings, to beautify that area, to be able to have the opportunities. I understand the reason for putting that language in there, more so for public record. We understand that we have a purpose for that money and intentions for it. I didn't take it to feel like it was, backing us into a corner, but rather being accountable to the funds that were given for a specific purpose. So that's kind of what I understood the intention of. And if that's the case, then I agree with it as is.
I think my intention was more just in other conversations that there were some wishes that it could be used to help with the cleanup of the Black Hills property as far as the cost of it, because then we could move forward on other things. There's no obligation for it, but if there's any of those intentions, I want to make sure we're forthright and upfront with that conversation has taken place and that is a consideration. That was the motivation behind that.
That makes sense. Thank you.
Councilmember Meisner.
You like to use the word cleanup, and that when you use that word cleanup, that scares me. That we're talking about, and it irks me that we're going to take money and then allocate that money for cleanup, which shouldn't be our responsibility at all. And we shouldn't be expending city funds, whether it be gift or out of general funds, for that cleanup. Now, beautification and parking and those types of things, I don't have a problem with. But to use money that is given to us in the form of a gift for cleanup, I fundamentally have a problem with that.
Mayor Pro Tem Hamrick.
And Councilman Meisner, I agree with that, and that was really kind of the basis of what I was talking about earlier. If this said that we had to use the money for cleanup, I would say no, and I would jump up on top and down top of the dais if it would help
I'd like to see that.
us get to know on that. But the general language in here is general enough that we can use it for whatever purpose we wish. And I think that's a good thing. Another way to look at this is that if Black Hills has interveners in front of the PUC who are trying to divert this money or spread this money around to all ratepayers, this particular language may strengthen their hand in saying that this is for Canyon City. It's a result of the Clark Station. There's some language in here about us using it for the betterment of the station or betterment of other areas within the city. And so there's another way to look at this language that is, you know, absolutely, the city does not want to engage in any activities that generates liability at that site. Absolutely. And I do not have fears from the language in this letter that we're, you know, have crossed that boundary.
Ryan Stevens.
Just going back to the logistics of, you know, accepting the money. So when I did speak to the city attorney about this, you know, the resolution is to obligate that money to the Clark Station property and betterment, and it will match what's in this letter. If the intent is that the city can use that money as we see fit, there is no need for a resolution. We can accept that money without a resolution. It would just be me signing this letter and sending it to Black Hills.
And depositing the
And
check.
depositing the check.
Well, isn't the letter as it is written as kind of as we see fit? That doesn't need a resolution?
It does say as we see fit.
Well, I know, but the problem is that I think it's conflicting.
And, yeah, and that, you know, that goes back to council and what you guys want to do.
I mean, it says we agree to use it to promote the betterment, but then it goes down and says that we could also use it for something else. Well, you can't agree to, or rewrite that sentence, or just take it out of there.
The first one, you mean?
Well, the first sentence says that we agree to use the donation for betterment of the site, which I understand, and I understand that's really broad. But then it also says that, so if we in fact agree to that, and here we get into the attorney language, then the second sentence really doesn't apply, because we've already agreed to do it for the first part. And I'm adamantly opposed to taking that money and allocating it towards the site that we don't even know we're gonna get.
So,
Oh, no, it says that the redevelopment of the site, if it is abandoned or if the city identifies another opportunity to promote the betterment of its parks, we can use those funds for those purposes. That sentence is absolutely essential and gives us the broad
Well, then take out the
discretion of
first
how to use
sentence.
it.
Well, I think the preference would be that the first preference would be that the money went to that site. And if by chance we abandon that, then there's it's like,
Didn't say that.
it is saying that.
No, it's not.
So let's go ahead and move forward.
is.
yeah, so,
Let's
think it
start
is.
on one side and say, do you give approval as is? And if there isn't approval as is, then we
Plan
can
A,
go
Plan B.
back with an amendment.
I'm comfortable approving the letter as is.
Me as well.
I'm comfortable approving the letter as is.
No.
I am.
Okay, so it looks like we're comfortable moving forward, giving Ryan the nod of approval to sign it. If needed, we'll ratify it in a resolution. I'd like to thank Black Hills for,
I think we still gotta have a resolution to have him sign it, don't we? It'll be in the
it'll be a
consent agenda?
It'll be a ratification resolution on
Right.
the March 2nd.
so, and the reason why we're coming now is because it is going to the PUC this week, so it was a timely matter.
Yeah.
And we're trying to be accommodating, and ultimately, this would be a wonderful opportunity for Canyon City, and we thank you and Black Hills for working with the city on this. And maybe my final comment is that this has absolutely nothing to do with Black Hills rates or the franchise agreement. This just has to do with water rights and with the Clark Station property.
That's a subjective statement.
It doesn't have anything to do with, for me, as the mayor, it has nothing to do with the franchise agreement.
So I just want to say that, thank you for thinking of us as a city. You didn't have to do this. It was very generous of you to bring these funds to our community. So, thank you.
Thank you.
Yes, thank you.
Any other comments from city council? All right, thank you, John. Then we are going to adjourn to an executive session.
I think you need a
I
motion.
think you gotta have a special meeting.
Yeah.
Start a separate
We are now starting a separate session, and we need to have a
roll call.
roll call
And then I'll make my motion.
and a motion.
Mayor and council, I move that city council enter into executive session for the purposes of to consider purposes of instructing negotiators pursuant to CRS 24-6-4024E.
Second.
There's been a motion and a second. Can we have a vote, please?
Councilmember Gonzalez. Councilmember Meisner.
Aye.
Councilmember Reed.
Aye.
Councilmember B. Smith.
Aye.
Mayor Pro Tem Hamrick.
Aye.
Okay, well, go ahead and go upstairs for our executive session.
We're going up?